Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on the time zone you're watching from. Thank you so much for joining the Musari Show once again. Before we get started, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you're joining us from YouTube. If you are joining us on Spotify, please be sure to drop a 5-star rating and also drop a comment. That is the most cost-free way and best way of helping us spread our content. That allows the algorithm to spread it further. So, without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce the person that we have here today. If I could describe this person, this is exactly where I'd like my wife to be in 5 years. Well, she would like to as well, as she does have aspirations in the real estate investment business. This is someone that has been seen on Fox, CBS, NBC, and Yahoo Finance, a heavyweight in real estate investment. She has been successful in real estate investments for over 30 years. She is a real estate broker and builder, the CEO of Golden Canyon Properties, and has flipped over 52 houses, two of which were featured on HGTV. She is an Airbnb superhost and landlady banker. She bought her first large profitable commercial property investment in 1994. She is also the founder of Your Wealth Network Meetup Group and Women's Wealth Network in San Francisco Bay Area. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Ginger Faith, who I'm really excited to have. Ginger, it's really an honor to have you today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So my first question, I always like to start with hard questions, right? And
Mhm.
I'm asking this as someone who's close to the age of 40. And I believe that there are people like me who once, when way younger, did kind of like imagine themselves in a further position in life by the time they get to the age of 40. You start having this existential crisis when you get there close, right?
Mhm.
And there are people who've hit the mark or maybe are past that and haven't gotten to where they aspire to be. And then one of your areas of expertise is how to secure an affluent retirement after the age of 40, starting from zero. So I believe that there are a lot of people who are intrigued by that. So before maybe breaking down how you can do that, how was the journey of coming to the realization that it is possible to start from zero past the age of 40?
Yeah, so there were multiple angles to that. One was my own experience, and then other experiences of close friends of mine. So it's a fabulous question. 40 is a great year because, yes, you can have an awakening and say, wow, being a kid isn't going to be forever. And you have experience behind you, but you have a great future in front of you as well. It's a wonderful
Mm,
time. So if it's later, it's okay too. You can start at any age, but there's several components to this, and essentially, what I try to encourage people to do is, number one, know your talents and abilities, your natural skills, and how that dovetails into real estate. That's number one. Number two, get yourself really, really educated on various aspects of real estate.
mm,
Find out where the opportunities are in your market. And there's two items that are critical. One of them is speed of implementation, and the other one is thinking big, thinking large and fast. And you've got the energy at 40 to still, move quickly and produce, but you also can learn how to think big. And
mm.
I always remember back in the day in the 90s where Donald Trump would say, if you have to think big. And I was like, what does that even mean? Right.
Yeah,
So here's a couple of stories that helps to flesh it out.
yeah.
One of them is my best friend who knew nothing about real estate, like very, very little. She was in Hollywood as a scriptwriter. She did some acting, some singing. She was a helicopter pilot. She came as an immigrant from another country. So she did car salesman. She was a great car salesman, good manager, but real estate, very, very little. She had sold 2 houses when I met her.
Mm,
That was it. She had just gotten a real estate license and sold 2 houses. Very, very profitable and very strategic. Smart gal, but she didn't know anything about real estate. So what she did,
mm,
she was thinking big. And she connected with a group that was really valuable and it really helped her. But what I noticed was it took her about 3 years and she cashed in with multiple 7 figures,
mm,
3 years. So when I hear the pundits saying, save your money, put money into Social Security, put the maximum allowance. I just read a stat from one of my group members that if you put the maximum amount in Social Security from the time you're 18 to the time you retire, you're only going to get like $4,800 a month back. And if you put it in the S&P at that same time, you'll get about $32,000 a month.
Okay.
So there's so many ways that we've been misled. And I'm a reader and I'm a learner, and I was misled in a lot of ways as well. And I was working hard, and I've done a lot of smart things, but I did a lot of stupid things too when I was younger, trying to figure things out, being misled by the wrong mentors, by the wrong gurus. And so what's out, once we realize that the media often has people who have their own agenda when they're educating us on buying their bonds and stocks and whatever, and fat commissions and all that stuff, you get to 40 and you're like, wow, I've been doing this and that, and it's not really working well. Real estate is still a way to kind of save your pants, even later. But so let's just break down the speed and the size. My friend didn't do this by flipping one house.
Yeah.
You don't get 7 figures by flipping one house one time. Now, the thing is about flipping houses, like anything else, anything you do in real estate has opportunity and it has danger.
Yeah.
Okay. And then people don't realize that there is actually risk. You can just lose it. You can go fly away. You can mess up. You can miscalculate. You can give it to the wrong person to invest, and they can abscond with it, whether that be a contractor, an investor, supposed investor. There's a lot of sharks in the water, right? And these are the things that people don't talk about in the books. They just talk about, here are the numbers and here are the calculations, and then this, 1 + 2, But
I know.
Right? So I highly recommend people that, yes, while you're thinking big. So my friend, go back to my friend. She made she bumped her knee a few times, she went with the wrong person and, a few mistakes. But during the time that she was doing this, I'm, in doing my thing. I've been perennially in real estate, and she's coming to me for advice. But what she's doing is she's flipping a 56-unit apartment complex.
Yeah.
She's not flipping one house. So sheerly by multiplicity of scale, she was going to do better than somebody who's flipping one house.
Yeah.
Although here in Silicon Valley, I flipped a house and we made $1.25 million, which is not too shabby. But that's another, that's a whole nother. That's a builder. That's when you're a builder, right? So builder in a luxury market. So, but she came out of nothing, and she came to me for advice on this, a little advice on that, and she'd make me dinner and we'd talk, and then pretty soon, she flips this property, and then she leaves me. She leaves California, moves to Alabama, buys 10 acres, gets a farm, and living her best life, and so I thought about that, like, wow, that is really amazing. Instead of just playing along, she was like very, very strategic.
Yeah.
And I've had times, like in the mortgage crash, where I was very, very targeted. I worked a lot, but flipping houses during that time and buying rentals at that time was the name of the game. No, it's not always that way. There's always going to be opportunities. So being an opportunist is definitely something you want to do if you want to retire early, look around, read, ask questions, talk to people, and focus on what you want to accomplish. Be very, very focused with a positive expectant attitude, but also protecting your downside. Richard Branson said, if you protect your downside, the upside will take care of itself. Now that's Richard Branson, of course, because he's like an idea generator, right?
Yeah.
But if we're an idea generator and we protect our downside, there's no stopping us.
Yeah.
So that's one. Think scale, think big. And once you do that, but think safety. So I have another couple of acquaintances in a group that I belong to. They just bought 2 100,000 square foot office buildings in downtown Chicago. They're empty.
Wow.
I do not
Location.
recommend that for the faint of heart.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he has several other properties and businesses that feed the monster
Mm,
while he's working hard to stabilize it. But once he
mm,
stabilized it, he got it for a fraction of what the value is. Because again, he's an opportunist. He saw this and it's distressed. Right now, office sector is distressed. And he has a strategy, has the education and knowledge to turn it around. Now, not everybody has that, of course. So I don't recommend that to anybody, of course. But what I'm saying is there's opportunity, and depending on what your story is,
mm.
what your money is, what your resources are, what your connections are, so ask the question, well, how do my talents and abilities dovetail with what opportunities are out there and my resources. So it's
Yeah,
really an inquiry. It's a mindset, but it can be done.
yeah.
So my friend did this in 3 years, and now she's a hard money lender. So she took
Mm.
the rest of the money that she didn't. She created her homestead, and now she's like loaning out money and getting, like, she's literally living off of her money now.
So she's like a private credit investor, sort of, would you say?
Mm-hmm,
Or
mm-hmm,
okay.
mm-hmm. So I recommend this to anybody. I mean, that's the life. One of my friends I know, he said to me recently, I make $50,000 a month just on loaning
Mm.
out my money.
Wow.
Like, holy wow! I want to be you when I grow up, right? That's awesome. So I think, so experience that the speed of implementation during the crash was my story of like, just like, hey, this is an opportunity right now. This crash is, at first the crash was horrible, and then all of a sudden it's like after 6 months of thinking about it, reassessing the situation, and a lot of prayer and figuring things out, I realized, okay, there's opportunity here. And
Absolutely.
but I knew, based on the strength of the market resilience, the bottom of the market was July of 2009. That's when Warren Buffett got back into the stock market. That was the absolute bottom. And then things started, rapidly
Yeah.
improving. So there's a little window. And oftentimes, if you're recognizing, there are cycles to everything and there are windows.
Yeah.
So where's the window? Where's the cycle? Can you go fast? Can you think big? And so gather up your resources and your skills and talents and look for those opportunities, because they're always there. The office sector was beaten to crap after, with COVID, and now they're saying it's coming back. So I
Mm.
have friends who've invested in office and they're doing all right. It's stabilizing now. So looking for those opportunities, that's how you can master the game, even at a later age. You don't have to. The traditional way that we were taught is changing now because of information technology. Information is just ubiquitous now, thank God, and it's wonderful. And so you have kids who are millionaires all of a sudden, which is not necessarily a good thing because they don't know how to deal with it yet, right?
Tell me about it. Yeah.
I'll take one in every color, like 10 Porsches today, whatever. So, but it's good in a way of the old paradigms are shattering of, like, just work forever until you're decrepit and then retire.
Mm.
So, right. So I have always said that retirement is a hoax. That's not something we want to ever
I
think
don't I
about.
don't believe in it either. I've actually learned not to believe in it. Yeah.
I read an article in 1998 by a magazine. It was called Worth Magazine.
Mm.
And the cover of the magazine said, "Don't retire. There are better things to do."
Mm. I
And I'll
agree with
never
that.
forget it. And I read the article, and the thing that stood out in my mind was that the concept, it's a mental concept, is that in the industrial age, the people, the overlords who created the big industries, recognized that people were more valuable at 20 than, say, 65 on the workforce,
That's
right,
right.
with manual labor.
Mm.
And so they created the retirement structure, and now people start thinking differently
As you
about
get
your
older.
lifespan.
Yeah.
And I just read a phenomenal book recently, and the very last chapter was it's called Thou Shalt Prosper, and the very last chapter was Never Retire.
Rabbi Daniel Lapin.
Yes.
That's the exact book that changed my conviction. I read it 2 years ago. I'm a
Ah,
big admirer of his.
ah,
We're talking, wow, 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 wow.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the exact book I thought of when you mentioned Don't Retire.
Right,
That's right.
right, right. I just finished it. I started it in June, I think, and then series of things. I ran into some wonderful Jewish people
Yes.
and a community, an amazing community by accident. And I started like absorbing their culture, just checking them out. But it was based on that book, Thou Shalt Prosper. So for our listeners, um, Daniel Lapin is a rabbi who spoke about how is it that the Jews prosper no
That's
matter
right.
what. And that's always fascinated me. Like you can just drop them anywhere. Anti-Semitism is all over the place, and you just drop them
Mm,
anywhere and they prosper. Like what's their secret sauce?
yeah.
Right. And that book extrapolates the psychological secret sauce. And one of the thoughts was in the last chapter, you probably remember, he said that the word retirement does not appear in Hebrew.
Exactly.
It's not
Because
even a word. So he said,
he talks from the perspective of like Old Testament scripture, like the Torah.
mhm.
He talks about Jewish literature, and he bases his beliefs on that. Yes, correct. He was
Yeah,
explaining
yeah,
how
because
Jewish
he's a
people don't
rabbi.
believe. Because I've been a until I read that book, I've been a Bible believing Christian for something like 16 years. And it's never really occurred to me that the Bible's very silent on retirement until I actually read his book.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And that was fascinating. And he said if you believe that Hebrew is the original pure language, which I don't know if it's true or not, but it can be argued, of course. He said it's the original pure language, and retirement doesn't exist, so retirement doesn't exist. So don't think, and I love that as a construct. But right now is a time for us to dismantle all the thoughts and beliefs, all the psychological chains that we've
That's
been
right.
fed, and that's just one of them, right? So the idea that you have to retire a certain way, you have to, okay, you save your money, not a bad thing.
Mm,
Saving money is power. You get power, right? So as long as you can do it intelligently,
correct.
even if you save it and you don't do as well when you're, because you don't know how to invest, at least squirrel it away so you've got something, some ammunition.
Mm,
Um, but ultimately, uh, all of these mental constructs, I love the fact that they're breaking. The more educated
mm,
you get, the more these will break down
the break.
and go away. And the idea that after 40 you're stuck because there's only one way to do this is crazy right now because
Yeah.
there's so many opportunities. So, and that's a paradigm I'm very enthusiastic about breaking.
No, thank you, and thank you for doing an excellent job of breaking that in me. I still got hope, and I believe that people in my situation got a lot of hope too. And in content creation, one of the topics that I did touch on was the area of personal finance. It's very interesting that you did make a point around, what people are taught in terms of what they put aside in terms of Social Security, in terms of saving by a certain age, and all that. And people like Dave Ramsey came to mind. And you also made a point about people who mislead others, right? Robert Kiyosaki always warns people about fake teachers. Don't listen to people that haven't made the money that you want to make in other ways. Just paraphrasing that. So there is a lot of content, and that has been for a very long time around, passive income, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes even I've gotten questions about passive income, and I must admit, I did share what I knew, right? And I'm not a real estate guru like you are, but I did kind of like answer more from a financial markets perspective because you do find instruments here and there that do generate some cash flow, but it's a very small percentage of the capital that you put in investing, right? Number one. Number two, instruments such as bonds, like you do get taxed on the interest income that you receive. And
Hmm.
number three, in order for you to make passive income that's enough to pay your bills, it needs to be a huge amount of capital. And a lot of the people asking the question don't have that much capital. On the other hand, you do hear, I have heard an entrepreneur, right? And he did state that he did kind of like compare money as a bucket versus a river, right? The mistake that some entrepreneurs make of treating money like a bucket. When they make a lump sum of money, they just gobble it all instead of reinvesting the money and generating a river of money. And one of your areas of expertise is the topic of passive income, right? And you
Hmm.
say that passive income is a myth in the universe where a lot of people are promoting it like,
Hmm.
it is the way to go. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So passive income as it's promulgated by people is a myth. Now, it's not a complete myth, but it
Yeah.
is a myth as it's promulgated, right? So,
Mm.
okay, so let me tell you my own story. Back in 1994, I decided I was going to buy a rental. And so I was reading back in the day Robert Allen's book, Nothing Down,
Mm.
and Tony Robbins' book, Unlimited Power. So between Unlimited Power and Nothing Down, I was going to become a real estate mogul, right?
Yeah.
So just by those two books. And so I remember picking up the magazine where they had a bunch of, houses for sale. And I said, I think, Robert Allen said, if you buy one rental property per year, single family home for 10 years, and then you start paying it off, that's your retirement.
Mm.
So I thought, well, what if I buy like a six family?
Yeah.
Then I'll jumpstart it. I can do it in 1 year, right? So that's the right thinking, but it was just kind of an intuitive thing. And then so I started looking at the magazine, and this great realtor picked up the phone, and he said, yeah, I said, I have a friend who just bought a triplex, and he all he does is collect rent, and he bought a Jaguar. And I was like, I can collect rent and buy a Jaguar. I can do that. That was literally what I thought, was my ticket. And so I bought this 6-family house, and I realized very quickly I was doing a lot more than collecting rent.
Wow.
Collecting rent was one of 1,000 things that I was doing, right? So I was painting it, taking rental applications, screening people, like
Mm.
fixing plumbing issues, because it was an old house, it needed work, which was another good thing that I did. I didn't do it deliberately. I was just cheap, and I wanted to. So I bought the worst house in the best neighborhood.
Yeah.
Totally accident, just because I was cheap and I didn't want to spend top dollar,
Mm.
But the idea of passive income, I learned very, very quickly. So every
Mm.
time I hear people saying, "Oh, you do this," and the quickest way to bankruptcy is to think that you're going to be passive. You're just going to sit around and collect checks, right? So, what is better is being more intelligent, thinking, getting really, really great mentors, but also money lending,
Yes.
but lending, not giving the money away, not,
Mm-hmm. That's right.
not giving the money to sharks. Okay. Ask me how I know. Right. So learn that, lesson over the years, right? You have to screen people to within an inch of their life. They need to have a solid track record. You've got to have solid contracts. You've got to know their character. You've got to make sure that they have a succession plan. If they get hit by a bus, then they're the
Yeah.
best operator in the world. What's
That's
the
right.
succession plan? Ask me how I know. Like one of the things, one of my friends years ago in my 20s, he said, very successful man. He said, Ginger, you're going to do a lot of smart things, and you're going to do some dumb things. Just make sure you do more smart things than dumb
The
things.
dumb things.
And you'll be all right. And I just laughed. I'll never forget it. And, and so as I'm saying these things, what to look for, I'm like, okay, because I've done that. And I've done that, and thank God I keep getting up to bat, so everything's working out well. But over the years, I've learned not to listen to people just by what they say. Watch what they do. If you're going to invest, make sure your paperwork you protect yourself. Try to be in first position if at all possible, and if you're in second position, make sure you have safeguards. So that's the idea. I mean, but my friend in Alabama, she's, a money lender, but she's
Yeah.
she's very shrewd. She's very intelligent, and she does not, just, write checks. She, you have to look at the product. You have to look at the person. You got to look at the whole situation. But an ideal, if you're going to say retirement strategy, which will never retire, so we're just going to use that as a place card.
Yeah.
Retiring when you're 150 years old. The idea is to do something like I was outlining to take care of your basis, so that you got the money to handle. Whether that be investing in a small business or a bit, something, because I'm also a real estate entrepreneur. had my first business before I had my real estate, something funded the business, right? So do something there. And then once you have the capital, investing is a skill. And it's an absolute skill. So read everything that you can, look at people, listen to people who, what are they doing? Who are they? But a great strategy is to invest in businesses like venture capitalists, right? Or invest in real estate that the operators and that, the IRR is going to be 22%. If everything works out well, or whatever it is, does it make sense? I have a friend who's right now investing, doing extremely well, making, double-digit returns, working with a guy who's building housing, tearing down old houses in Berkeley, right? And anywhere right now where there's colleges, kids are upgrading. Kids have a better standard of living. The parents are paying for their college. They don't want to live in crappy dorms anymore. Now they have, rec rooms, and they've got nice place, everything is like, bicycles and, all that stuff. So, so a lot of these old properties are either being demoed or repurposed and made it be nicer. But the numbers really work when you start sticking beds into a property, so the velocity of money is strong like that.
Yeah. That's right. That's interesting. That's a very comprehensive response to that. So you did highlight a couple of books. I did notice that you've read Thou Shalt Prosper, which I've read as well. You made mention of Think Big by Donald Trump. That's one of the books that's actually sitting in my backlog. You made me more excited. Maybe I'm going to jump a couple of books in the queue to read that one. So what would you say would be the best 3 books? Let's say I want to get into the business today. What would be like the top 3 books that you'd recommend our listeners to hear in order to get into the real estate investment business?
Wow. Well, today with the real estate investment, I would definitely recommend podcasts for sure. Because you can listen in your car, so and they're cutting edge. They're new, right? It depends on what your need is. So if you need a mindset shift, so what's going on with you, right? If you need a mindset shift, if you need motivation, if you need to kickstart yourself, I'd say, Tony Robbins, right? If you need to kickstart yourself, right? Go for that. Some of the work with Bigger Pockets are great, different Brandon Turner, some of his work. So I would peruse through that. I am a big fan of the J. Scott Shield Commercial Academy. So I do a lot of my education through Kajabi, through the, audio right now. So yeah, I think as far as that, those are I've read over 1,000 books, mostly on personal development and business. So which one would be the best one for real estate? I think they all repeat themselves in some way, right? So that's why I'm saying I think you can learn probably faster from some YouTube videos, depending on what are you interested in. Maybe an overview. I think maybe anything that can give you an overview. So I would go with the Bigger Pockets. I think that would be probably a good place to start. Any of those, but think of it as getting a college education, general. General ed, right? So it's okay, because you can do well in almost any aspect of real estate. There's several factors. What's the market conditions, right? And then what's your own skills and talents, and what's the upside, right? What's the upside? So you can. So if you know about buying notes, then I would say, learn about buying notes. No, that's not for me. Okay, learn about hard money lending. Okay, well, that's maybe for me. Look at flipping houses. Okay, maybe that's for me. Are you a contractor? Are you a builder? Do you passionate about that? So where are your orientations? And then just because, look, this is about not only just making money and being successful, because that's a given. We have to do that, right? But it's also about living a lifestyle that is suitable to your personality and enjoying the process. Right? Because time's not going backwards. We got this one shot. Do the best we can of enjoying the process. Now, that being said, there are some things that may be difficult to learn, and then maybe you need to challenge yourself. That's not the same thing as, the whole concept of follow your passion is like a two-edged sword. You want to go with your strengths and find out what they are. But sometimes things that are really good for you and you can get passionate about in the beginning look like hard work and your brain doesn't want to do it.
That's right.
So right now I'm focusing on commercial real estate. And in the beginning, a year and a half ago, when I started learning it, I literally remember watching these videos. We have these Zoom calls with my group once a week. And I remember going on these videos and saying, oh, I would rather watch TV right now and like
Yeah.
popcorn, right? Because it was new and it was challenging, but now I love it, but I had to force myself to do something I didn't like. So the whole follow your bliss, passion is really misleading. It's another one of those things, right? So it's like, it's like retirement, and it's like, that there's so many mental constructs that we have to really evaluate and make sure we're not being fed BS. And that, and then follow hey, we'll just hang out at the beach all the time and do what, right? Collect seashells,
And I really think the Rabbi Daniel Lapin agrees with you on that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So, so I don't know if I gave you any books. I said Bigger Pockets, Mindset. I would be Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Earl Nightingale. Those are things I go back to over and over again. They're classic. They're great. Think and Grow Rich is great as a basic. I would definitely recommend Thou Shalt Prosper. I think that book's fantastic. That'll be on my read again list, at some point. It's like, I can't believe I finished this. I got to go back to it. It's so rich and beautiful. So right now I'm reading a phenomenal book by Henry Cloud. I thought it was a new book, but it's been around for 15 years. It's called Necessary Endings. That's a phenomenal book about pruning things that dead wood in your life. Not only dead wood, things that are not growing to the capacity that match your vision of your life. As part of a natural process of life. So that's a book I highly recommend, no matter what you're doing. Sometimes people, if they're, that 40 thing, and maybe there's things that you're doing that are not going to bring you to where you need to be. And so it's not only a matter of doing something, it's a matter of getting rid of stuff that doesn't work anymore.
That's right.
That's a huge book. I really wish I had read that like 30 years ago. Get rid of a lot of dead wood faster. So those are some books I think that have extreme merit.
That's awesome. And also one of your topics of interest and expertise as well is actually a topic that a lot of females are not too comfortable talking about, which is, being a woman in real estate. So obviously you're thriving. I do know a lot of people that are not thriving as well as you are. So tell us a bit about how you've overcome the challenges to be where you are right now.
Being older helps. Absolutely. I hate to say it, but when I was younger, when I was a young woman, my first experience, I was buying some multifamilies, and I went to my first workshop ever. And one of the men asked me if I was there looking for a husband.
Oh my goodness.
And like, he was rude like that, but the thinking, that was in the 90s. I was crazy, right? So women were not doing what I was doing. I was, I was like strapping on the tool belt and hammering and figuring out if I liked construction, which I didn't really, but I thought, my
goodness. And the way you really kicked the door down for a lot of like ambitious females as well.
Yeah. I should have capitalized on that earlier and been on TV. I was just working. I wasn't thinking about it. So, it has absolutely been a challenge and a blessing being a woman in the field. So on one hand, men are men. Okay. And you say, okay, that's that. And a young woman is particularly vulnerable.
Yeah.
Okay. And a young, attractive woman is vulnerable. And so acknowledge reality. Okay. You're vulnerable. So just do whatever you need to do to keep yourself safe psychologically and physically. Okay. On the other hand, good men like to help girls. They like to help.
That's a fact.
Right. So that has been a blessing because I was this young girl who's like, what about this? What about that? And they like that because, if you're talking to successful businessmen and you have a pretty little girl who's asking you questions about what you're passionate about, they love it and they can play hero and everything's good. So
Mm,
I learned so much from men. But the challenge is the men end up falling for you sometimes
mm.
because they're so charmed by your ambition and cuteness and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a little dicey, right? So I have no magic formula because I didn't think I played it perfectly, but I'd say good boundaries. I think Henry Cloud has a book on boundaries. I got to pick up. I'm good now. I'm good now with it, but for a young person, a
Yeah.
young woman, right? So how to negotiate that? So I don't have any magic formula, but I think just looking at reality as reality, and then just protect. I'd say just protect your heart, protect your mind, protect yourself, and whatever that means being in a group with people, being having a buddy system with another girl, something like that, who's also ambitious, or just
Yes.
finding the right guy who's going to be respectful, because there are men who are respectful and
That's right.
they're solid, and find those. So but those are real things, and it's a blessing and a curse. It's a two-edged sword, absolutely, and it has to be looked at. You can't go in, you shouldn't go in, you can do anything you want, but you shouldn't go in blindly thinking that it's not a male dominated area. In commercial real estate, for example, 97% of all commercial investors are men.
Mm.
97%. And
97%.
of the 3% that are left, 1.5% have inherited the commercial asset.
Yeah.
So there's only 1.5% of women who are in commercial real estate. So it's changing, but it's still very, very tiny. So that's in commercial. And residential, it tends to, women tend to be the agents, but not the investors.
Not the
Men,
investors. Yeah.
right. But that's changing too. But it's
Okay.
still, the ratios are very lopsided. And so you are, going into a male dominated area. So I would say, just, boundaries, protect yourself, know who you are, what you want to do, but also realize that men are not enemies by any stretch of the imagination. They're great allies. They have to know that you mean business and where you stand on things. And then you could do really well. You can do better because men will tell you their secrets, and more than they will another guy, because there's no
Yeah,
ego,
true.
right? There's no ego. So
Yeah.
there's value.
No, that's really rich, and that's really honest. I really appreciate that. So, just from recapping the discussion, I can see that some of the key traits that I've picked up in talking to you are very common among a lot of successful entrepreneurs. One of them is a lot of them say that you're the average of the five people they hang around, and I've noticed that a lot of the success stories that you shared were from very close friends. So that shows that you hang around the right people. Being around them has like kind of influenced your thought processes very positively in the area that you're at, and it's led to and contributed to where you are today. Another one is a lot of them are very well read people. They say readers are leaders. That's a very common cliche, and that also shapes the way we think. I'm very, very glad that I found someone who also doesn't believe in retirement. Actually, I must admit that I did expect a different comment, since in the wording of your profile, you do mention that you do talk a lot around planning retirement, only to find that you don't believe in retirement like I do. Well, retirement in brackets when you're 105, God
Mm-hmm.
willing, we'll get to that age. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, as a wrap up, what would you say? Let's say there are people who are listening who are not in the real estate business yet. They're kind of like studying the market. They're listening to like Grant Cardone, considering getting in one day. There are people who have started. Maybe they have the wrong concept. They can't really tell the difference between real estate investment versus just like flipping houses, and how one is more lucrative than the other. So, what would you say to someone like that who's listening to this podcast?
I'd say do not quit your day job. Okay. Make sure you get your bills paid, and then make it your part-time job to educate yourself. Go to real estate investment meetings.
Mm,
Okay. Be careful of the gurus that stand up there and chat. Be careful, because some of them are great. Some of them are shysters, but they sound
mm,
good. Okay, so, but bounce around to some real estate meetups. Do, like I said, big podcasts. Educate before you invest a dime. Do not invest any money until you have at least an idea what you're doing. It doesn't have to. You'll never know everything, right? And so sometimes jumping right in is the way to go.
Yeah.
But right now in this market, prices are high, labor costs are high, and we've got inflation we're negotiating. We got issues right now with with the insurance, and so there's a lot of landmines right now. And so can you do well? Yes, of course you can do well. Is it going to be a different landscape? Yes, of course it is. And so just before you invest any money, make sure you know what you're doing. And hang around with the right people and just take your time, get involved, and get educated. Now, of course, if you're over 40 and you're trying to compress time, do it faster. Yes. Go to more real estate meetings, go to more education, work and then have your second job, instead of doing an Uber second job, I'm going to educate myself on wealth building second job. That'll be reading, that'll be listening, that'll be networking, you being active. It doesn't happen just by hanging around. You've got to be out there. My girlfriend, it took her like a few years, a great example. I met her at a real estate investment meeting, at 8:00 at night when, everybody else was watching TV or whatever, right? Where they're networking but she was always out there saying, this is what I have. This is what I'm looking for, and then I saw before she found that, she bumped her knees on this and that and didn't do well, but then when she hit it, she's like, oh, I got it. This is, so get out there.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Thank you so much for this. And, you just reminded me of an event that I did attend by Andrew Cordell. And he does his events in partnership with, I forgot his partner's name. And he did present a statistic of how many people become billionaires on average in the US. If my memory doesn't fail me, I think the number is about 70 per annum. I think it was 70 or 30. And the stats did show that from the 70 that get into the billionaire bracket in terms of net worth, 70% of that comes from real estate and private equity alone. Private equity as an investment in private businesses, I believe, lending as well. And from that 70%, 28% is from real estate, and the remaining 42% is from investing in private businesses. So this is a perfect confirmation for that. I wish we could really go on for hours and hours. There's so many gems that you shared, but I'd like to thank you once again for joining us. And I believe that the people who are watching are really going to be hooked, and they're going to want to learn more about you. So tell us a bit about where people can find more information on you and find more content that you share that can benefit them.
Well, I do have a YouTube channel. So you can, Ginger Crystal Faith is my full name. So I do have a YouTube channel. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Facebook and pretty much all the social media outlets. So just reach out to me. All my phone number is out there as well. So
that's great. Ginger, thank you so much for joining us. This is really a gem. I almost feel like I'm being mentored, learning every day. It's really, really humbling to have you on board.
Thank you so much. Your questions were fabulous. So it was easy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.